Yeah, it's visible.
Yes,
Can
yes,
speak
yes.
in English?
Thanks. So, shall I start now? Or shall?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna start now. So, our title is the translation as a product and then translation as a process. So when we are analyze the translation, we can analyze in the two different way. There we call it, the very first way is the linguistic product and then the cognitive the process. So from now, I'm gonna start explaining detail about the linguistic product, the kind of like the translation product. So when we are gonna talk about the product, we can refer to the really best two modules and then also like the representative model for the translation as a product. That one is that vanilla and then double back the technology, and then also another one is that cat for linguistic approach. So what is the difference between them? So the very first one has a really classic mode, and then also this one has a wide impact. We will also take a look at in detail in the next slides, but the difference between them is that the very first one is more look like giving you the really wide range, and then also the second one is translating by using the shift. The shift means like a changing from the kind of like sorry, taken from the part of the speech, kind of like that, but I'm gonna also give you the some example more in the next slides. So we're gonna start by talking about the very first one, vanilla and the Delphinate model. And actually this one has been carried out by the comparative stylistic analysis of French and English. So when you are gonna explore about this model, all the example will come in the French and the English. And then also so how do they get this work? So like, and actually they are influenced by the Russian theorist and translator Andrei. By looking at his work, they become like an influence, and then they are decided to build up this model. Um, so then how do they analyze this? So they explore a lot about the both French text and then also the English text. Based on that, these models has been built up. Then, so what is that? So usually in this one is that they identify the different translation strategy and procedure. So so you can just memorize like this model is based on the strategies and procedure. The second one, the cut part, is that based on the strategy. And then also for the procedure is like they use the specific techniques and method based on the text. So in here also I give you the example like free and literal translations. Like TT is the text and also ST is the source text. For this free and that one, this one is a strategy, but for the procedure it's like trying to translate like step by step by following the detailed procedure. That is like that. So when we talk about the strategy, there are two different types of strategy. That is the direct translation and the obligate translation. So what is direct translation? Of course, that is like just like the name, it just translate everything directly. But for the obligate translation is sometimes we need to follow the based on the culture. We need to change a little bit to be able to convey the target meaning. So that is the difference between these two strategy. Um, and then so talk about the procedure. Procedure is based on the translation. For example, for the direct translation, we have a three procedure. So the very first one is borrowing. Borrowing means just like a transfer directly, as like a direct translation. And then also another one is calculus. This one is the expression and structure are transfer based on the literal one, literal meaning. And then also the last one is the literal translation. This one is like a word for word translation. For example, this one is the source one is the noun, then the target will be also the noun, kind of like that. For the borrowing, it's just only directly. So like you can memorize in this way, like there are two strategies. The first strategy have a three procedure. Then how about the second? Of course, the second translation will have a four procedure because altogether it's gonna be the seven procedure. So here are the other four. So these other four are, you can see, the transposition, of course, they are not direct anymore. They even change the part of the speech. For example, in the writing, in the very source language, they have been written in the form of the verb. But to translate it, we have to change it into the noun to make it like to be able to convey the correct meaning. So in this kind of situation, we have to use the transportation. And then also the modulation. So modulation is the change of the semantics and point of view. So for this time, it's becoming a little bit advanced because like they even change the point of view. And then also another one is equivalent or idiomatic translation. Okay, so this one is the part we always feel complicated because like when we see idiom, it's really difficult to translate it directly to our language. But sometimes we have the similar meaning but different word usage. Then we can't help. We have to use this one. So for this kind of one, we call it equivalent and then also the idiomatic translation. So even though they have a different stylics and a structure, however, still they are the same situation like that. And then also the last procedure is the adaptation. So what is adaptation? Adaptation is that changing based on the cultural reference. For this one is I think uh, I have read one of the book. In the very first book is that one is in English. In English, it's like they are saying like the boy is crying a lot because he don't want to eat broccoli. If we translate correctly, but when they are trying to translate it into the Burmese in our country, there is like broccoli is not a thing we really hate. Like kind of like for us, it's like we don't really like coriander leaf. So like the translator try to translate by using the coriander leaf. The boy is crying because the parent is forcing him to eat the coriander leaf, kind of like that. So for this one is totally changed. It's not a direct translation anymore. However, based on the culture, we have to change it. For this one is we can see the meaning of that adaptation clearly. And then also, so for this one is that there are altogether 7 procedures, but in actually these 7 procedures are the main procedure. There are also we still have a supplementary translation procedure. So what are they? They are the amplification, force friend, loss gain and compensation, and then also the explicitation, and then also the generalization. Things for these all are just only like having to be able to convey the correct meaning, but to be like when I try to confirm, like we mostly use only the 7 procedure. So then when we have to talk about the level of translation, so how can we can make like all the procedure are operating in the 3 levels. The very first one is the lexicon, the second one is the synthetic structure, and then the third one is the message. In here, the message mean like it doesn't mean correctly like they are conveying the direct message. Here, the message mean like they need to give like kind of like by changing the phrase, by changing the word. However, they still give the same message, the main target kind of like that in here. They want to mean like that. So, and then another one is that analytical steps. Okay, so of course we have to still taking care about how to analyze them, like just by using all the procedure, just by using all the strategy, can we translate it directly? No. However, we still have to analyze it. Then how can we can make up 5 steps. The very first one is we have to identify the unit of translation. In here, unit means the part of speech. Of course, we have to take care about that. The second one is examine the source language text, and then also the evaluating the description, effective, and the intellectual content of the unit. Even like sometimes there are those some translation are even though we are trying to direct translate, the meaning becoming like the content becoming not descriptive anymore, not effective anymore. So we also need to examine those area also. So because that's why we are saying like there are also the oblique translation, because sometimes the direct translation is enough, kind of like that. And then also the third step is we construct the metalinguistic context of the message. Of course, we also have to reconstruct in that way. Sometimes like even though in the source one they are writing like a first and second, but when we try to translate, we have to reorder them, reconcept them. Those kind of situation also need to be remind ourselves for the translator. And then also the last another one is that evaluate the stylistic effect. And then also the last one is produce and revise the TT, the target text. Of course, we have to revise it, we have to proofread. In that way, for the translator, from the point of view of the translator, they will be able to convey without any mistake and error. And then here, now we have been right to another one, that is the careful translation shift. So, okay, so what is a shift? So we can also see shift is like operating them into the range of the different level. We're just making an important distinction between a formal correspondent and a textual equivalent. Like in here also we have already gave like the example phonology, graphology, grammar, lexic, sentence, clocks, group, word, morpheme. We have to shift those things by analyzing the language as a communication. In here they are focusing more on that to be able to communicate. So here, let's look at, there are two different shifts. The very first shift is the level shift. So level shift is like we are based on the grammar in one language and lexis in another. And then also for the second shift is the category shift. To be able to see a little bit clearer, we take a look at here 4 different kinds. Structural shift. This one is the most common one because like they are just changing the structure of the sentence. Of course, we have to change the structure. Every language have a different type of the structures of the sentences, like sentence structure. And then also the second one is the class shift. So what is a class? Class here means part of the speech. Unit shift or rank shift. So different rank. So what does a rank mean? In here we have also rank, sentence, clock, group, word, morpheme. Sometimes we also need to change the clause. And then here is the sentence shift. It means like it take place one source language and then target language possess approximately the corresponding system. So the way they are trying to is like some of the parts that we can also see is really similar to the previous one. However, this one is also really popular ways. So now, starting from now for those shifts, like the option, Markedness, and stylistic shift in the translation, starting from now, Stella will keep presenting. So Stella, announce yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm audible enough. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Stella, I can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue. Yes, we've been talking about the shifts, and I'll talk about option, markedness, stylistic shifts in translation. So, what is a stylistic shift? So, we see that this is an interest in the intervention of the translator and the relationship he has with the source text as the author. So, we've been anytime you're doing a translation from the source text to the target text, there has to be some shift. So one of them is the stylistics. In that case, now it leads us to something called markedness. So this one now we find that it is a choice or pattern of choices that stands out as unusual and may come to the reader's attention. Look at that example there. Challenging it is, boring it isn't. So of course we can see that this is a job advert. It was one to recruit police officers in London. But now if you are to translate this, sometimes it might not occur the way you want it to be because of the ordering of the adjectives. If you were to translate this to your languages, you would find that it might not bring out the message you'd want it to bring. So in that case, we'll go to the next part. Yes, so as Hazel mentioned, when it comes to translation, we have two processes. We have it as a linguistic product and as a process. And this is what we call the cognitive process. In this cognitive process, we have a model that we call the interpretive model of translation. This was by Danica and Marianne. And this stated 3 stages that if you were to have a process of translating, you begin with reading and understanding. So this is where the linguistic component needs to be understood by reference. You have to get the explicit and the implicit meaning. So first you read and you understand. After that, you deverbalize. So this one now you transfer using senses. So here, this has to do with your mind. It's a mental process. Then after that, you re-express. So here, the targeted text is now given form using the mental process that you did. So here, you express what you re-express what you have read and understood. Then finally, you verify. The last process is called verification. So here the translator now revisits and evaluates the target text. Is this what you wanted to? Is this what you wanted to translate? Going on. Yes. So how do you investigate a cognitive process? Because now you have given the model. How do you investigate this? The part that has been given is called a think aloud protocol, or TAPS, think aloud protocols. This is when the translator is asked to verbalize the thoughts, and they go through a mental process. They use their senses, and then from there they translate. It could be done at that time or later. So after that, this is now recorded by the researcher, and then it can be transcribed and analyzed later. So it is a mental, or a cognitive process that is happening. Going on, we shall see that things have become developed. There are innovations happening every day. So we have some technological innovations for TAPS. Some of these are like the video recording and observation. Yes, you can record. Then one is the use of pre and post interviews or questionnaires. The one is the use of translogged software. And the last one is the use of eye trackers. And these eye trackers record the focus of the eye on the text. So these are some of the technology innovations that are coming up on how to, on ways of cognitive process when it comes to translation. The next part will be the other part. Yes. So this one is just an example, is a study. I want us to see how this process happens. Now, the first part, Greenwich, ST, that is the source text. The other one is the French, the target text. But from the target text, we have now the English, the translation that was done. Of concern for me is the first text, the source text, and the back. Because the back translation is the one that shows us how the French was done. Now, we just look at the first sentence. The ancient town of Greenwich has been a great way to London for over 1,000 years. Now, let us look at the back translation. I don't know how many of you speak French, but as you can see, that one, it's the same way that begins. The invaders coming from the continent passed through this ancient
Okay, your voice
town.
is missing. Yeah, go on. Anyone speaks
sorry?
French? Anyone speaks
Can anyone?
French?
Yes, Taylor is presenting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Taylor,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Is there anyone here who speaks French? I don't speak French, so I don't know, but I'm just assuming that the back translation is the same that of the French. Okay, so I want you to see the English one, the source text. It begins with the ancient town of Greenwich has been greatly to London. But look at the back translation. The invaders coming from the continent passed through this ancient town. So as you can see, there's a process going on. There are some parts that are missing. Of course, the title is the same. You can see the title doesn't change at all, but the wording, the way it begins, it's different. So going on to the next slide, we'll see what is happening. So I just took a part of the first line. If you look at the source text, which is in English, you can see the title doesn't change. It's the same. But you can see the source text, the ancient town of Greenwich has been gateway to London for over 1,000 years. There's a missing part in the back translation of the French. We find that number 7, invaders of the continent coming from the continent. The invaders coming from the continent. That's where now the text begins, and you can see past. There's a process happening there. So the process that happens will be in the next slide. If you take us to the next slide and see what is happening. Yes, this is now the explanation of the processes that we have been discussing. So we can see the title is there's a borrowing aspect there. It's direct, no change in it. It's simply borrowing English to French. But number 2, we can see that there's a process happening. The target text, which is sit ancienville, which now later we come to find it now in 8 and 4 in the target texts. So we see there's a shift happening there, and this process we call it economy and transposition. Number 3, there's omission. We don't find that word in the target text that was in the back that was in the source text. Number 4, we have a process economy and transposition. Number 5 is omission. We can't find it. Number 6 is omission. And of concern is number 8. If you remember, there was past. That one was patient when it came to French. So there was a literal translation. So that is the process that is happening. I just took that first line so that we can see the process that is happening when it comes to the translation and the shifting that we have been talking about all through. So I think that is the end of our presentation. Translation is a product and is a process. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us.
Okay, thank you, Hazel, and also Stella for your presentation. And okay, make sure that you send me the PowerPoint through WhatsApp or whatever. So because sometimes they're too small, yeah. We do hope that the next presenters make sure that the PowerPoint presented is in a bigger one. I mean, there might be your screen, yeah. You can make it wider so it is easily seen. Okay, thank you. But later we'll have a question later, I think. Okay, once again, thank you, Hazel and Stella, and it's your time, Sarfaraz and Sadaf, for presenting your work. Yeah, your
Hello, sir. Assalamualaikum.
yeah.
Can you listen me?
Yeah. Your voice is not quite clear, but yeah, try. Okay, thank you, Hazel, for sending me.
Sir, is it right now? Can you listen?
It's much better, I think.
Sir, thank you so much. I think it's right now. Sir, shall we start?
Okay, you can start your presentation.
Yes.
Share your PowerPoint.
Can you see? Is it visible to you all?
Yeah, it's visible now.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's in.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, me and sir will be presenting about the equivalence and translation and untranslatability issues in translation. So both of the
Your voice is not clear.
how is now? Is it right now? Is it right now?
Yeah, it seems Yeah, it's good. Good enough. I don't know what the others. Yeah. Uh, if still possible, you can make it bigger.
Yes, I made it 100%. So both are the issues in translation that we will be discussing. Before Sadaf, I will be telling you about the equivalence, which is this. So uh, before moving to the equivalence in translation, it is important to know that what is different, what is the purpose and meaning of equivalence in English. As written in front of you slides, and the meaning is taken from the dictionary. Equivalence does mean it is an adjective and noun. First of all, as an adjective, it does mean that equal are interchangeable in value or quantity or signification. It is. Or the second meaning of equivalence is that having the same or the similar effect are the meaning. As a noun, it defines the state of being equivalent or interchangeable. So both adjective and the noun give the same meanings. So in logics or in mathematics, certainly it has the different meaning. In the sense of mathematics, it does define that binary truth function that takes the value of the true when both the component sentences are true. So this is just the concept of mathematical concept. So it is not compulsory to know about it, but is the direct meaning that it is the state of being equivalent or interchangeable. So in translation equivalence, Jacobson 1957, he just defined in just two lines that how what is actually the translation equivalence. He mentioned that translation equivalence can be unity in difference or the sameness in difference. So both of the sentences does differ and have the interchangeable meanings. But when we look at first unity in difference, so it is very we know that somehow one of the most difficult things when we make unite some different things in same. When we look at the second about sameness and difference, so the concept comes from the both sentences. So in next slides we will be converting or knowing the meaning of the both sentences. Currently, what is equivalence? Let's understand that the concepts of sameness or the similarity is called equivalence, or the in other words, as earlier mentioned, in mathematics or in logical sense, the similarity. What does it mean? That not necessarily symmetrical. Is the examples are written in English, it is defined the practical similarity that this copy of Miss Lisa is like, or the Miss Lisa is incredibly like this copy. So does not similarity. This similarity does not mean that it's symmetrical similarity or not. Similarity it is reversible or not similarity that is transitive. So all these types of three types of similarity does not mean that things have similarity. Secondly, similarity in cognitive aspects does define that there must be two entities which are similar, or in other sense, two entities are the thought of is similar. Um, Maybe any you can say that two objects, or maybe two genres of literature, or maybe the of similarity in both the objective similarity and in the mind when we compare two things. And the models of similarity in cognitive science is mentioned that it would define that the mental distance model are the concept located closer to each other are in mind and proximity of the values. And secondly, similarity in cognitive sense can also define the feature the contrastive model and the degree of the shared distinctives when we compare two things with it. So the concept is same as I earlier mentioned, and that two entities are similar if they are if they share at least one feature, at least one feature. One feature is not available, then the things will not be similar. So then the requirement is at least one feature. And secondly, two entities are the same if neither has feature that is other legs. So it is not similarity when we look at the same feature. Those same features we could not find in the other thing. So this is the sense of just a similarity. And now let's compare the translation theory to the contrastive analysis. The notion of equivalence, primarily a translation theory, the notion of the equivalence in the translation theory is primarily translation theory, and the conceptually it defines that it is the translation theory. But when we come to know the sameness, it is understood differently in the translation theory and the contrastive analysis. So the contrastive analysis as a concept also is useful in the translation theory. So both are interdependent, we can say, and is Lang and Parole as the competence and performance. This is the example, and the translation theory and the contrastive analysis is like Lang and Parole, as both Lang and Parole and the competence and performance are dependent on each other. And equivalence in translation theory give the three kinds of approaches. Number one is equative view, and second is toxiconic view, and number third is the relativist view. In detail, let's know about those three approaches, such as in equative view. Then we come to know that it gives the sense of when we come to know in sense of translation, one of the scholars, two scholars in one Kelly in 1979 and 1989 give the sense that how the equative view is presented. They took some of the texts that and presented in their books, which are written in slides. We can see that in the sense of equative is that when we add one A and second A, the points are going to be increased. Look at the third number row. We do have sense that here A is equal to A. When we add one A to the other A, the dots are increasing 1, 2, and 3. So this is the concept. And secondly, the toxiconic view is presented by many scholars, but all of these scholars give their different views about the toxiconic view. But as John it's about the non-secret text that will be translated more freely than secret ones. So sometimes the non-secret texts and texts we feel I mean fear, or we could not translate those or we cannot present the same concept. So this is in the sense that we should be in mind and thinking while translating. So this is these are the different definitions which are giving about the taxonomic view by different scholars. And last was the relativist view, campaign against. It was just like a campaign against the equivalence and translation. And Sen by in 1988 actually rejects the identity assumptions or the equivalence as an illusion. And other scholars also give their views, different views about the relative view is written in front of you. The concept is this: is Churchman says in his statement that the introduction of the relation norm governing professional translation behavior. Actually, the relative view was totally, we can say that. In a sense that was rejecting the concept of equivalence. And above all of the three approaches can be concluded in these points that the most scholars in translation theory today reject the equivalence as an identity assumption in all its forms, whether that is formal, semantic, pragmatic, or the situational form. And for equivalence is juridically untenable, and equivalence misinterprets what translators actually do. And also the equivalence, the relevant similarity between the source language text and the target language text is not giving an advance, but a text shaped within the mind of the source, target language and under the number of the constraints. So this is just the conclusion by the Charlesman against the we can say the demerits of the he told just the merits and the results of the equivalence, what does happen behind the background. So the central issues in translation in this actually these issues are presented by the different scholars who raise their voice against the different in different manners. Some of them give the different definition, relevance, and applicability. So the key theories who give their theories about the equivalence in translation are the Venn and Darland, Jacobson, with the Guildford, House, Taker, Newmark, and Kohler. All of these theories just presented their different theories. So we don't have much more time to go in every theory, but I personally noted that some of the theories are important to know in translation. So let's understand about those theories. First and foremost, before moving to the theories, let's understand that there are three main approaches to the translation. And so first the approach that we came to know is the linguistic approach. In it basically the translation in itself is not merely a matter of linguistics. So when the scholars or the translators or the interpreters translate in this approach, they do not discuss about the linguistics. And the second approach is that it just in second approach the scholars, the translators does not give its name, but they give the just sense of second approach. They mention that the a transfer of message from source culture to the target culture. In it, there must be the effect between the source culture or the link between the source culture and target culture. So if it is not, then we cannot call it the second approach of target language or the, translation. And number third approach present that present the sense of pragmatic and the semantic, how they functionally approach or how they function in different types of texts. So some translation scholars stand in the middle, or some of them could favor against could favor in first approach or in third approach. So among them, Baker was one who could stand and mention about these approaches that equivalence is used for the sake of convenience, because most translators are used it rather than because it has any theoretical status. So this is the sense of these three approaches. So number one theory about the equivalence in translation was given by the Benny and Dorman. They mentioned both about the equivalence, that equivalence-oriented translation is actually a procedure which replicates the same situation as in the original, while using completely different wording. So by simple this definition, we came to know that it is just kind of a situation that directs us toward the originality of the text, but with different words. It must not change the concept of the real text. So, and they also present different points about the equivalence, and there are different points. Some of the major points are in front of you. In first point, they mention that this procedure, if applied during the translation process, can maintain the stylistics impact of the source language and the target language text. So these are some of the important points that when translating a text must be applied. And in third point, they mention that the equivalent expressions between language pairs are acceptable as long as they are listed in a bilingual dictionary of full equivalence. So this is the point through which we came to know that the expression between the language pairs are acceptable. But it is when it is that text or the material is fully listed in bilingual dictionary with the title of fully. And some other points are mentioned by them. They mentioned that the need for creating the equivalences arises from the situation, and it is in the situation of the source language text the translators have to look for the solutions. And in second point, it is mentioned that even if the semantic equivalent of an expression in the source language text is quoted in a dictionary or glossary, it's not and it does not guarantee a successful translation. This is the point that gives the clear sense that how being in the sense of equivalence we could translate by applying different kind of books or the dictionaries, and they should have the linkage between both source language and the target language text too. And number second theory was given, number second theory in the sense, and also was written by the R. Jacobson about the equivalence and about the equivalence. He actually presented that how equivalence has difference. As I earlier mentioned, the 2 points are giving equivalence and difference, unity in diversity. He mentioned that he mentions first of all the similarity approach. In it, he says that there is no singleton without singer. So it was a quotation, a little just a sentence which I was giving that Beck's he wanted actually indicates the 3 kinds of translation in his definition. Number one was the intralingual. Within it, he mentioned that the sense of intralingual was that within one language, rewording or paraphrasing. And number second type of translation was interlingual, which was between just 2 languages, not more than 2 languages. And the intrasemiotic translation was between the sign systems. Yeah, in sign systems, we can he presented number third maybe for those who could not present the things orally, but when we have need of the translation, so as we could translate it. So in interlingual translation, the use of synonyms in order to get the source language message across. Further detailed description says about the interlingual translation is mentioned that it is between the 2 languages, and in example is given that in interlingual translations there is no full equivalence between the port units. And in addition to all of those points, the notion how the equivalence differs. It presents that the notion of equivalence in difference. In first point, translation. It is in first point. It is mentioned that the translation involves two equivalent messages in two different code. And in second point, is mentioned that from a grammatical point of view, languages may differ from one another to greater or lesser degree, but these codes does not mean that the translation cannot be possible. In other words, that the translator may face the problem of not finding a translation equivalent. Yes, it is one of the root causes. Sometimes translators are the interpreters who understand that they could not translate without those unit codes, but it is possible. And third point, whenever there is a deficiency, our terminology may be qualified and amplified by loanwords or the loan translations or the Equivalence, the semantic shifts and the circumulations. So all of these points indicate that the terminology can also be one of the problem, but with this, when it is not better when both the sense and the qualified both words are when the words are qualified and amplified, whether those are translation or not. And he also presented the similarity those who there yes this is the similarity between both of the theory of the translation translatability and the similarity between the Vene Darbeland theory of the translation and Jacobson. In this similarity, uh, the points mentioned the points are mentioned in front of you, and can be read that whenever a linguistic approach is no longer suitable to carry out translation on the other procedures. These are the just similarities between both of the theories. And in last in second third point, which is one of the most important points, it is mentioned in the under the line of similarity that the role of the translator is the person who decides how to carry out the translation. This is the thing, basic thing that we need to keep in eye. The role actually matters. How does the translator play? And additionally, uh, R. Jacobson tree essentially is based on a semantic approach to the translation, and the translator has to record the source language text message first. It is the prerequisites for the translator. He must, according to Jacobson, he must understand the code which is sent by the source language text, and he or she has to transmit into the equivalent messages for the text. And the third theory was presented under third theory, and the different views about the equivalence and translation were presented by the Nida and formally they presented the formal correspondence and the dynamic equivalence. Both in actually these both formal correspondence and the dynamic equivalence are can be said that these both are the types of the equivalence. In both of the writers mentioned about the formal equivalence and the dynamic equivalence. So the formal correspondence, according to the data, is the focuses attention on the message itself in both the form and the content, where the dynamic equivalence is based upon the principle of equivalent effect. the Nida, the sense of approaches, her approaches can be concluded in the following points: that the product of the translation process, the text in the target language must have the same impact on the different readers it was addressing. But it is one of the most important points that the dynamic equivalence in translation is far more than more correct communication for the information. Despite using a linguistic approach to the translation, as mentioned, Nida is much more interested in the message of the text and its semantic quality. She has the focus on the language, that the sense of language or the meaning of the text should not be lost. It must be this. And fourth, the sense in the translation, equivalence and translation was presented by the Bedford. He actually presented the translation shifts and give the detailed description of translation shifts types, or the types of translation and shifts of translation, how different shifts are available in translation. So he presented that a more linguistic, he presented more linguistic approaches, both approaches, the types of translation and the shifts of translation. His contribution was to present both, and the types of translation which are based on the criteria he presented was: number one was the extent of translation, full translation, and partial translation. And number second was the grammatical range at which the translation equivalence is established, range bound translation, just unbound translation. And number third was the levels of translation involved in translation. It was the total translation or the restricted translation. So these are the three types presented by the Bedford. And the three potential kinds of equivalence presented by the Bedford are the formal equivalence, semantic equivalence, situational equivalence. The formal equivalence can be defined, which can all be approximate, as semantic equivalence, which is theoretically possible, or the situational equivalence, which is the basis for the translation. So one point among all these points, one of the points that the Catford actually rejects is the movement metaphor. What is movement metaphor? It is actually, as mentioned, in a sense that actually nothing is nothing should be transferred from A to B in translation, or rather, target language or the translation in this word is in process of replacing the textual material in one language with the textual material in another. So, in this words, it is not the matter of movement metaphor that we keep one thing from one language to the other language. No. So it is, in a sense, it is just the matter of replacement. The translator translators to carry. Yes, according to the Catford, the translation shifts were the notion-based distinction, and the translation shift approach. It was the linguistic approaches to the analysis of the translations. Yes, he actually defined the translation shifts in his definition that these are the departures from formal correspondence in the process of going from source language text to the target language text. He presents the two main types of the translation shifts. Number one was the level shifts, and number second was the category shifts. Level shifts was the source language at one linguistic level. It may be the example is given the grammar or is the target language equivalent in different levels, and the category was another. And additionally, category shift was divided into the other four main types, which are given here. Structure. One was the structure shifts, second was the class shifts, and the third was the unit shift, and the fourth was the intra-system shifts. The detailed description is given in front of you. So the structure shifts involves the grammatical change between the source language and structural language texts, and the class shifts is not the matter of is the just the structure. Rather, it also involves the target language text, which belongs to the grammatical class, also such as the verbs may be translated with the nouns. Class shifts and the unit shifts involve the changes in name, and the intra-system shifts occurs in source language text and the target language text systems. Correspondence partly is their constitution, but translation involves selection of the this just the definition given for the system shifts. So yes, indeed, on his theories, there was the criticism by the Snell home owned by in 1988. Snell presented some of the points against him. Among them, major are written in front of you. So the first is he presented the Tedford's definition of the textual equivalence is circular, and his theory relies on bilingual formats hopelessly inadequate. So this is all about the criticism that Snell criticized the Tedford's theory and the translation shifts. And number six, the approach, and this is the last theory, which is presented by the M. Baker's approach to the translation equivalence was uh, is in front of you. Actually, in Baker's sense, he divides the equivalence in different kinds of description, such as the grammatical or the textual or the pragmatic equivalence. So these three grammatical, textual, and the pragmatic equivalence are the major approaches which are given by the Bakers. The conditions upon which the concept of the equivalence can be defined, according to the Bakers, the equivalence, more detailed list of the equivalence, are she explores the notion of equivalence at different levels in relation to the translation process, including our different aspects of the translation. So types of equivalence presented by her are the at word level and above word level. In equivalence, uh, both of the types are presented by her. So in word level and above word level give the sense of a bottom-up approach to the translation equivalence at the word level, bottom-up approach. And so it will go hard. And the first element to be taken into the consideration by the translator are the words as the single units in order to find the direct equivalent in target language text. And the definition of the word term, since a single word can be sometimes be assigned different meanings in different languages and might be regarded as the different more complex units of the market. So this is the sense that he started from the he gave the sense of uh, both types of the approaches. The where in grammatical equivalence, when referring to the diversity of the grammatical categories across the languages, there are some of the rules presented in the grammar. Number one, the number 1 point is mentioned according to her that the grammatical rules may vary across the languages, and this may pose some problems in terms of defining a direct correspondence to the target languages. I'm not going to read all of these points because we are lack of time. So this is just a sense that how grammatical equivalence is presented according to the, and the textual equivalence in detailed description is written as when referring to the equivalence text between the source language text and the target language text in terms of information and the cohesion. And the description is in front of you. The pragmatic equivalence is also given by her. Then in detailed description, when referring to the implicatures and the strategies of avoidance during the translation process, it presented both implicature and the applied meanings. They are in implicature. Implicature is not about what explicitly said, but what is applied. There is in applied meanings. There, the translator needs to work out the applied meanings in translation in order to get the source language text message across. So this was my part. I would invite further for the untranslatabilities issue in translation. Hello, Sada. Hello.
Yeah,
Am I
hello.
audible?
You
Hello,
finished?
am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please. So, hello.
Yeah, hello.
Can you please show them? So, this is my part, untranslatability issues in translation. Can you please change the slide? So there are some outlines of this. Like the very first one is untranslatability. What is their definition? Types of untranslatability. Examples of untranslatability and the procedures to compensate for this. So these are just main outlines of the untranslatability issues. So the very first definition is that the degree of difficulty of translation depends on their nature as well as on their translator's abilities. So from this definition, it's quite clear that the difficulty lies in the abilities of the translator. Can you please change the slide, Sarfraz? Yeah, the other definitions are like the very first one is untranslatability is a property of a text or of any utterances in source language for which no equivalent text or utterances can be found in target language. Another one is that a text or utterance that is considered to be untranslatable is actually a lacuna or lexical gap. Please change the slide. So here are some types of untranslatability. Caterford, actually, these two types were given by Caterford, and he also distinguished between these two terms. The very first type is linguistic translatability, untranslatability, and the cultural untranslatability. Can you please change the slide? Okay. So, linguistic untranslatability. When there is no lexical or syntactical substitute in the target language for an source language. Okay, so here we have a sentence like wie darf man sie morgen wecken. Okay, and this is the example from the German language, and another example we have from the Danish language, that is Jak von Brot. So these are both are linguistically untranslatable because both sentences involve structure that do not exist in English. But can you please change the slide, Surfraz? Yeah. So, by restructuring the German word order, adjusting the position of the post-positive definite article in Danish to conform to English norms, a translator would unhesitatingly render the two sentences as the very first one that I uttered previously, if you darf men sie morgen wecken, that was the from German language. So we can translate it into that, what time do you like to be woken tomorrow? And other sentence that was from the Danish language was Jak von Brood was its mean we can translate it into I found the letter. Yeah. Can you please change the slide? So that was the linguistical untranslatability. Now here's cultural untranslatability. Absent in the target language culture of the relevant situational features of the source language text. As you know, every country has their culture, and everywhere they follow their own cultures. So sometimes it becomes very difficult to translate the cultural words. Okay, so here's of the example of different concept of the term bathroom in an English. Finnish or Japanese context, where both the object and the use made of that object are not at all alike. Okay, actually, the thing is same, but we have different words for the same thing in different languages. That is bathroom. Okay, can you please change the slide? Now there are examples of untranslatability. The very first one is the register. Although Thai language has words that can be used as equivalent to English like I, you, or he, she, it, they are relatively formal terms. In most cases, Thai people use words which expresses the relation between a speaker and the listener according to their respective roles. For a mother to say to her child, I will tell you a story, she would say, "May ya bak lik nita." Okay, or a mother will tell child a story. So can you please change the slide? So here's another term, that is grammar. Chinese has no tenses per se, only three aspects. The English verb to be does not have a direct equivalent in Chinese. In an English sentence where to be leads to an adjective, it is clue. Where there is no to be in Chinese, there are no adjectives in Chinese. Instead, they are stative verbs that don't need an extra verb. If it states a location, the verb they is used, as in we are in the house. So we can use they instead of that. And in most other cases, the verb she is used, as in I am the leader. Any sentence that requires a play on those different meanings will not work in Chinese. Please change the slide. Yeah, so we have vocabulary. German as well as Dutch languages has a wealth of modal particles that are particularly difficult to translate as they convey sense or tone more rather than strictly grammatical information. The most infamous example perhaps do Dutch or the Dutch, which roughly means don't you realize that? Or in fact it is so through someone is denying it. What makes translating such words difficult is their different meaning depends on intonation or the context. So from this we can say that intonation and the context give an effective put an effective in language. Please change the slide. Yeah. Now it's term of family or the sibling. Okay. In Arabic, a brother is often translated into however, while this word may describe a brother who shares either one or both brothers, there is separate word like shaki to describe a brother with whom one shares both parents. Okay, so the word brother also has in different languages we pronounce different word for brother. Can you please change the slide? Yeah, grandparents. In Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish, people have the terms. Languages have the terms of farmer and farfar for paternal grandparents, and more and more for maternal grandparents. The English terms grandfather and the great grandmother also have different terms in Swedish language depending on lineage. This distinction between the paternal and the maternal grandparents is also used in Bengali, Chinese, and Thai languages. Yeah. We also have different terms in our language, like in Urdu or Sindhi. Yeah. Then comes the aunts and the uncles. Arabic contains separate words for mother's brother, a khal, and the father's brother, the closest translation into English is uncle, which gives no indication as to lineage, whether maternal or the paternal. Similarly, in Arabic, there are specific words for the father's sister and mother's sisters. Also, the same system lives in other languages. I don't know about others, but yes, indeed, we have in both languages, like in Urdu and Sindhi. We have different words for these, like we call the mother's brother as mamu and the father's brother as chachu. Yeah. So the nephews, niece, and the cousins. Whereas English has different words for the child of one's sibling based on its gender. Nephew for the son of one's sibling, niece for the daughter. The word cousin applies to both genders of children belonging to one's aunt or the uncle. Many languages approach these concepts very differently. So we have an example of Spanish language. So if Spanish distinguished in both cases, the son of sibling is sobrino, whereas a daughter is sobrina. Equally, a male cousin is primo, while a female cousin is prima. Can you please change the slide? Yeah. Then, in Italian language, we have word cugino for male and cugina for female cousins, where English does not have such words. It uses nipoti for nephew and the niece. Okay, yeah, please change slide. Nipoti for both the genders. Yeah. Then comes the relations by marriage. In American English, the term my brother in law covers my spouse brother, my sister's husband, and my spouse sister's husband. In British English, the last of these is not considered strictly correct. Please change the slide. Now we have two other terms like the puns and the wordplay. Similarly, consider the Italian edit, like the we have Taradutore and Taraditore. A literal translation is translator and the traitor. The pun is lost, though the meaning persists. A similar solution can be given, however, in Hungarian by saying for the dot and the for the days, which roughly translates as translation is distortion. So when we translate the similar words, when we translate the words from one language to another, though they contain the in their structure, but while translating them, we lost their structure. Yeah, please change the slide. Now we have procedures to compensate for this problem. The translation procedures that are available in cases of lacunae or the lexical gaps, including the following. What are those? Please change the slide. The very first one is adaptation. An adaptation, also known as a free translation, is a translation procedure whereby the translator replaces a social or cultural reality in the source text with a corresponding reality in the target text. This new reality would be more usual to be audience of the target text. Please change the slide. Now, in adaptation, we also have an example in the Belgian comic book, The Adventures of Tintin. Tintin's trusty cannon's sidekick, Melu, is translated as Snowy in English, Bobe in Dutch, and Stroopy in German languages. Likewise, the detectives like the Dupont and the Dupont becomes the Thompson and Thompson in English, Jensen and Jessin in Dutch, Schultes and Schultes in German, while the Hernandez and the Fernandez in Spanish languages. Yeah. So this adaptation, we can say that it is totally a free translation method. And other one is the borrowing. Borrowing is a translation procedure whereby the translator uses a word or expression from the source text in a target text unmodified. In English text, borrowing not sufficiently anglicized or normally in italics. Please change the slide. So we have calc. Calc entails taking an expression, breaking it down in individual elements, and translating each element into the target language word for word. The German word we have Alan Hithito Sanchipo. It's quite difficult to pronounce, but yet I have put my efforts to pronounce it. So it can be into single representation claim, but a proper translation would result in exclusive mandate. Okay, so this was the example of please change the slide, Safra. Yeah, so we have another term that is compensation. Compensation is a translation procedure whereby the translator solves the problems of aspects of the source text that cannot take the same form in the target language by replacing these aspects with other elements at the form in the source text. Let's change the slide. Many languages have two forms of the second person pronoun, namely an informal form and the formal form. This is known as TV distinction, found in French tu versus vos, Spanish tul vos versus usted, and the German du versus say. For example, but not contemporary in English language. The translator may have to compensate by using a first name or nickname, or by using syntactic phrasing that are viewed as informal in English, like I am, you are, gonna, etc., and so on. Or the nowadays the word used or the wanna or something. Or by using words, English words of the formal and informal registers to present the level of formality. Then other have the paraphrasing or the paraphrase. Paraphrase, sometimes called periphrasis, is a translation procedure whereby the translator replaces a word in the source text by a group of words or an expression in the target text. The Portuguese word "saudade" is often translated into English as the feeling of missing a person who is gone. So these were some types. Can you please change the slide, Safran? Yeah. So we have another term that is translator's note. A translator note is a note added by the translator to the target text to provide additional information pertaining to the limits of the translation, the cultural background, or any other explanation. Some translation exams allow or demand such notes, while some translator regard reporting resulting to notes as a failure. Please change the slide. So here is the conclusion of our presentation. The notion of equivalence is undoubtedly one of the most problematic and the controversial areas in the field of translation theory. The term has caused, and it seems quite probable that it will continue to cause in this a heated debate within the field of translation study. This term has been analyzed, evaluated, and extensively discussed from different points of view, has been approached from many different perspectives. And the first discussion of the notion of the equivalence is translation initiated the further elaboration of the term by contemporary theories. Even the brief outline of the issue given above indicates its importance within the framework of the theoretical reflection on translation. The difficulty in defining equivalence seems to result in the impossibility of having a universal approach to this notion. So, can you please change the slide? So, this were the our presentation conclusion. Then we also have given the references of the text. And thank you so much for your attention and listening us. Thank you. And this was the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Safaras and Sada, for your presentation, which covering almost all actually. And I think by listening to the last presentation, it seems that we do hope that you have noted, we have uh, acknowledged, you have learned more theories related to translation, at least based on the topic given in every group. And I think one, one well, every presentation has its own contribution to the overall knowledge that we know so far. And but let's say if I give you some suggestion for the last one, I mean sample point presented by Sarfaros. I'm not quite familiar with the abbreviation. Yeah. Okay. Would you turn on your once again still from the beginning? Yeah. From the
Yes, sir.
beginning. Yeah. Some let's say.
Yes, sir. And there were SL source language text, STR.
Yeah, TE and so on, so on.
Yes, sir.
And
Sir, actually,
yeah.
and these all were mentioned in the different papers and books too, and is the shortcuts such as
Okay,
TR
just a minute.
trans.
Let's say like this one again. CA, what does it mean? TR?
Sir, contrastive analysis. CA contrastive analysis
Oh,
and
I see. Okay.
TR
Oh,
translation theory.
yeah. Okay, translation theory. And what about TE? You got TE as well. What's it mean?
Sir, TR translation theory, CA contrastive theory, contrastive analysis.
Not TR, TE. Okay, just go on from the beginning. Yeah. Uh, yeah, next. Yeah, next. Yeah, and before that. Yeah, next. Okay, the translation, right? Just a moment. This one. TR theory, because you got a theory at the same time. Before this one. Okay, back from the
Yes, sir.
before this. Yeah, no, yeah. Okay, yeah, just
Sir,
yeah.
over here, AD adjective and a noun. So
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
sir,
What about
this
T?
T translation equivalence.
Oh, I see. Translation equivalence.
Yeah.
Okay, because you got equivalence and translation, and then you got TE. Okay,
Yeah.
so you reverse the what's that? The the arrangement from here in equivalence and translation. You got translation TE. So okay, so translation equivalence. Okay, I think it's better yet that you write down the complete one. That
Yes.
would be easier. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
next.
I was just editing, and there was the problem running in the PowerPoint. That's why I could not edit.
Okay, it's okay. You can do it later on. Okay, next. Yeah, because just to make sure. And then okay, and then listen. Uh, what about this one? TR. What about EQ equivalence?
Yes, sir. Equivalence.
You see, TR
And
human translation theory, right?
yes, sir. Sir,
Hello.
yes,
In the
sir.
conclusion, TR means translation theory.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
TLR
because
translation theory.
it's not quite clear, isn't it? And then EQ means equivalence. Equivalence.
Yes, sir. And sir, SLT source language text, TLT target language text.
Yeah. I do understand this one. Source language tag and target language tag. It's okay, but this one, because you got theory here, so it seems confusing for me. So you can write down like translation theory and equivalence. Yeah. So because EQ means can be emotional quotient. You see.
Yes, sir. Sir, I was. Yes, sir. I will edit it and later send it to you.
Okay, so you can
Actually,
make it
there are
clear.
shortage of
Mm.
yeah, shortage of places. We have arranged this word.
Yeah.
In
It's better that you use the common terms. Yeah,
Yes,
because
sir. Sir, it was. Sir, actually, it was mentioned in some of the articles because
Yeah, I know.
except
Yeah, make sure because not everyone read the original one. Yeah, so
yes,
I think it's better that EQ means equivalence. Yeah,
yeah,
and and TR means translation. Okay, because I never have read TR as translation as a what is it, as a short, yeah, as abbreviation. So that why check like this one. Some people use target language, target text, yeah, okay, like this one, target language text. Sometimes they use target language, yeah, without text, but use you use also TT target text. So if you use the same terms, it is easier for us to understand. Yeah, so we have three ways. Let's say target text or target language text or just source target language as well without text
yes,
because sometimes text is not always in terms of written one. In general terms, text can be spoken, yeah, in especially when we talk about discourse, yeah. So in discourse, text not always should be written but can be spoken. So um yeah, text in general is of course, yeah. In common, for the common people, text is a written one, but sometimes text in a specific term related to not only written text but also spoken text. And okay, just that's one of the suggestion to make
yes.
sure that what you have written is clear. Okay, just again, yeah, you can do it later on. Well, anyway, once again, thank you so much for those two groups who have presented your topic, and I think yeah, we have still time. But anyway, before we go on with our discussion here, I just want to remind you for the next two meetings, that will be our last meetings, okay? And then after the mid-test, I'm still thinking of the kind of mid-test that we are going to have. But let's say for the next two meetings, I think we divide you to two groups. Yeah, eight of you into two groups, and then so it depends on you to which group that you belong to. But at least four of you to be in one group, and the others would be another group. Okay, the first group will present based on. I think I'll share you some articles. Yeah, maybe one article. One article related to translation, and also the second group. So the next meeting will be for the first group, and I think I'll try to find article which is yeah, we can discuss in this. But anyway, I think not only the presenters who do presenting, but also the other groups also make some what's that reviews as well. Yeah, so once again, so you are divided into two groups. So each group has four people, and then and the first group will give a presentation next week, and the other groups you should also make some notes or some summary of the same article, and then the other groups will be for the next meeting after the next year, after next week, yeah, or the last meeting we have, and then the first group also have some resume from the article presented by the second group. Is that, and do you understand what I mean? Do you get the points?
But Muallimin, just to make sure that I understood what you said.
Yes.
So, for example, if Sarfaraz and Sadaf and Still and Hazel were the first presenter in the next session, then
No,
the review.
you may have your new groups, okay?
Yeah. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah,
So, for
yeah.
example, then after that we gave review or we gave comments
Mm,
on the presentation or notes, right?
mm. Now, oh, let me say.
So,
So you are divided into two groups once again, yeah? Two
yes,
groups, and all of the groups, yeah, are responsible for at least, yeah, to understand given in the topic. But the two group have different tasks, different what's it? Different yeah, different way of, and then one as the representatives, one as only, the second group is only as the, well, some who want the group who make summary or comments and so on.
yes,
So make sure that everybody read the same article so you
yes.
can give comment to the presenters. And then for the next week, no, not the next week, after the next week, we have the same, but of course, a different article. Yeah, and then maybe the second group will present in the class, and then the other group will give comment and so on. Is that,
Okay,
yeah? Do you understand what I mean, everyone?
yes. So you mean that you gave us two articles for the next two sessions, and
Yes,
everybody have to read the same articles to give,
yes,
but some will present and some will give comments about what they understood from the articles, right?
yeah, as a group, as a
Okay.
group.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes, everyone read, but you may discuss with your group, and it's up to you which group would you belong to, would you join. So I just let you free, let you choose yourself. So well, just to make sure that we do understand what we learned so far. Well, I think it's not quite difficult anyway. I'll try to find article. It should be in a, well, we try to get a good one because you are supposed to write an article as well next time, yeah. So I think we may have a look on the style of the article from the journal, of course, and then we may have a look what should be in the article, and also how this article is written and how the subject matter, yeah, was explained in the article. Let's say maybe in an article consisting of, let's say, introduction, and then later on they got their usual interest, they got theories, and then second one just like findings about the result of the research, and then of course the conclusion. But at least you are, um, I'll try to show you as well how an article is written, because next time, of course, you have to submit an article yourself. Yeah, so this is only an example. I'll try to find a journal from Scopus when I'll try, and I'll think I'll send you as soon as possible because this class is on a Thursday as usual. So we do hope that on Monday I've sent you the article to at least one article for the next week, and then for the following weeks, yeah, that the meeting after the next week, yeah, there will be a new one. That's what I have in mind. Okay, any objection, or do you have any idea? Different
No,
idea?
actually, we're
Yeah.
worried about the exam. I keep thinking about it from now. Any idea how the exam is gonna be like? Um, because we don't know, we keep thinking about it from the very
Mm,
beginning of the semester. So,
I
if
see.
are we supposed to write articles like first semester, or is it gonna be form of exam? Just I'm not sure. So, just need to ask you
Well,
about
I
the exam.
haven't talked to Pak Prihantoro as well, as their another my partner. So I'll talk to Pak Agus as well, maybe. Because I have in mind that the exam won't be in terms of making, I mean, short essays in only about 1 hour. No, we do hope not. So you may have 1 or 2 days, even yeah, several, maybe, yeah, at least, yeah, at least 2 days. So you have time, and I have in mind to ask you to make a review of the same article, but make sure that your your work is original one. So don't copy someone else, because once again, it depends on your on what is that, in on your integrity. So make sure
Yeah.
that it is your own your own text. Otherwise, because um, once I had two students, and then their work is almost similar, maybe about 80, more than 80% similar, except that the font is different. The font was
Yes.
different, but let's say even the mistake in one sentence is the same. So how do we know that which one is original, and which one is the what's that, a copy? So then I decided at the time to make those two of them fail in the exam. Okay, so okay, because yeah, yeah, they have the same the same yeah, the two works is really similar, except on the font is different. Yeah. So and then I'll try to read one by one. And at that time we didn't have Turnitin like now. I think now is we can see whether someone's is a copy of someone else. It can be seen from the Turnitin. So make sure that it's really your original work. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you consider to be failed in the exam. Yeah, that's one of the point that I think I should talk to you. And sorry to keep you, yeah, in this, because it's been 15:48. So we have last longer to keep you longer, 8 minutes. Once again, thank you so much. I'll contact you. I'll communicate with you in the WhatsApp group. Once again, thank you, yeah, everyone here. We will meet again on Thursday at about 1 o'clock. Yeah, next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
You're
Thank
welcome, everyone.
you,
You're
sir.
welcome, Hazel, Sadaf, Stella,
Thank
Safaraz,
you.
Hain, Francisca, and Yvonne Das, and Noro. Okay, thank you. I'm leaving.
Okay, thank you and goodbye.
And you too.
Alhamdulillah.